Hey you guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about, another book of the week. And if you don't know what it is, then, you probably missed the title. But that is P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han, which is the second installation with the To All the Boys I Loved Before trilogy. Now, I'm going to preface this and say this isn't a tea talk. This isn't a non-spoiler tea talk whatsoever. Book of the week is kind of my way to explain my feelings as I'm reading through the book and just kind of explain how I'm feeling in a sense. And on top of that, these will have spoilers. Sometimes they're not the first book in the series. And yeah, so just beware if you haven't read the books yet that there are going to be spoilers to things. So, but for those of you guys who don't know, this book is essentially the second book of the series, which follows Laura Jean. And in the first book, what happened was all of her notes had gone out, or her love letters to 5 boys had gone out, including one from one directed to her sister's current boyfriend. And as you can tell, that kind of doesn't work. So she brews up a plan where she ends up in this fake relationship with one of the boys she had sent a letter to, Peter Kavinsky, to kind of throw her sister's ex-boyfriend situation off the trail. Now, however, things kind of go wrong. And if you've seen the Netflix movie, you essentially know what happens in the first book. Now, this one takes up like five days after. Now, I have to say the movie ending and the book ending are vastly different, where Laura Jean goes to meet up with Peter. It doesn't happen until the second book after a big fight had gone out and after she had written that letter and whatnot. So this is kind of them figuring out what it means to be in an actual relationship, both Peter in a non-kind of like manipulative relationship and Laura Jean in one relationship where she can actually be herself, essentially, if that makes sense at all. I feel like it does, but like one where it's her first relationship, so there's a lot of firsts going on. Now, I feel like, this is my honest thoughts so far, is that this book suffers from what a lot of series tend to do, and that is the normal sequel, the problem with sequel, like the sequel syndrome is what I'd like to call it, where the first book was great, the second book was and the third book was kind of like the best one out of all of them in a sense, like in that situation. And I think this one kind of suffers from that. Like there is plenty of angst thus far in the book. One of my biggest issues with it right now is that Laura Jean is very insecure, which makes sense. She did just come up from the situation where this video was leaked and it looks like her and whatnot and it needs to be taken down. But however, her insecurity lies more so with the fact that Peter is still fairly close to Genevieve, and Jen, as we all know from reading the first book and watching the first movie, isn't the greatest person out there. But Peter kind of explains repeatedly that he does not have any feelings for Jen. It is over. Dunzo, there is nothing left there. And all he's doing now is being a friend because she's going through things. And Laura Jean continues to kind of ask him what these things are, and he doesn't want to explain because it is not his place, which I understand, but at the same time, some way there has to be something he can do to comfort her a little more. And it's just, every single chapter that I have read thus far involves some kind of insecurity with Laura Jean versus Genevieve, and she doesn't seem to want to try and talk to Peter about it or explain these insecurities to her. She's perfectly okay with kind of mulling in them. And when she does try to explain it, Peter kind of, she doesn't explain that she's insecure. She explains that she's jealous of the situation, and Peter kind of like, I don't want to say it brushes off her feelings, but he just doesn't want to talk about it because I feel the situation's been beat around essentially. The dead horse has been beat to a bloody pulp, and there's nothing that really fixes it. And it's kind of frustrating that all that we can do right now is be stuck in this mindset of, I am never going to be Genevieve. And I get it, this is a juvenile relationship, this is like the first or the second and all that stuff. But Laura Jean comes at it from such a very immature standpoint, I'd like to say, that it's kind of frustrating to read because you can tell that Peter is like stuck between this rock and this hard place of being a good guy to be a friend for his ex, and as well as being a good boyfriend, but neither Laura Jean nor Jen is kind of giving him that ability to explain himself or do that. And that's, I think, a little frustrating to read, to have to see like Laura Jean's thought process and her not want to talk to Peter about it or explain her feelings and just be frustrated the entire time. I sense the introduction of another love triangle. We have been introduced to John Ambrose McLaren, who is so far such a sweetheart. Like, oh my goodness, like I am in love with him. But I also adore Peter because Peter's like this precious little funny goofball that you can't help but love. They're just both really great guys, and I just... Ugh. But anyway, there's another introduction to another love triangle, and I don't see the point in it. I think that we already have such a pivotal part of like Laura Jean, Jen, and Peter, that like situation going on there, that we don't need to add Peter, Laura Jean, and John Ambrose McLaren. And yes, I am saying his full name because it is a wonderful full name and it just flows. Like, how can you not say it? But I just don't like the fact that there is this secondary love triangle, simply because it just seems to want to, for me anyway, it makes me feel like that the writer is trying to impose this idea that there has to be a villain. So Peter and Jen are very close and like kind of tight-knit, even though they shouldn't be in Laura Jean's eyes, but Genevieve is going through things that Peter cannot explain. So they're automatically villainized, demonized in Laura Jean's eyes. So we are introduced to this picture-perfect boy who wants to put Laura Jean first and wants to make the situation like 10 times better. And I just think that it's not okay. I think that we already have the issue with Jen, Peter, and Laura Jean. And if that continues to be a big pivotal part, which it's probably going to continue being a pivotal part in this book, that I just wish that we didn't include John, because he's going to be this nasty, like, we're going to fall in love with him and he's not going to be a choice, is essentially what's going to happen. And we're going to be demonizing Peter for it because, you know, we know what's going to happen. And I just feel like it's just making it, they're trying to give us this antagonist when there doesn't really need to be. Like, we're seeing Laura Jean start to villainize Peter a little bit, but we've already villainized Jen to the point of no return, and Laura Jean doesn't want to understand any kind of idea that goes on with Peter or anything of the like. So it's just this continuous cycle of who is the villain, who is the antagonist, and it's just, at this point, it feels like it's doing it for the sake of having a villain, doing it for the sake of having a bad person, and it's overdone, and I'm not a fan. Like, I get the time period when this was written, and this was written like early 2010, I believe. Oh, well, if they're mentioning One Direction and Steal My Girl and Style, then maybe like 2014. So, like, you know, I get it, like, the maturity levels aren't there yet. They're still in high school, and like around this time, the idea that like that jealousy is a negative, like this insecurity with yourself that continues on into relationships and everything, hasn't exactly been popularized by media yet. But it's just kind of annoying. It's just this message that we're bringing in here that like you have to choose between one or the other. There's always a dragon in the story, and you can't see that like in certain situations there is no dragon. And I think that there could have been a better plot twist or some kind of other way to introduce an antagonist without introducing multiple idea that like these two people are out to get them, or like this relationship. I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. I am like high-key wishing we got more story on Genevieve, because thus far we just hear that she's going through things, but like Chris doesn't know what's going on, and they're cousins, so Laura Jean is automatically like more suspicious, and Peter doesn't want to explain because it's not his story to tell, which is a very valid thing to say. He can't explain Genevieve's situation, only Genevieve can explain her situation because it is her story. And I just want more information on that. I feel like Laura Jean always talks about how great friends they were and da-da-da-da-da. And I feel like there should be some explanation as to like what she's thinking about, what possible family things could be going through. But there isn't. We're just seeing, oh, it's family things, which is suspicious in of itself. And it's just kind of this like continuous like repetitiveness with this like plot device that literally goes nowhere, but just builds up the frustration to the point of almost predictability. So I just don't like it. I want to see Genevieve fleshed out more past the idea that she is this stereotypical bad girl of the school who kind of bitches everything out and makes people's lives miserable. But deep down there's a story there. And I would really like to see that, and I have a feeling that we might not see that until like way later, which is kind of upsetting because I was willing to villainize her in the first book where or like towards the beginning. But now that we're hearing like this constant like, oh, she's having family issues, she was crying, I want to hear an explanation more than just, I can't explain. Because I'm sure that there is a way you can explain a situation without going into too much detail and explaining like what is going on. And it's getting frustrating that we are not seeing that, and it's not, I don't want to say it's not okay, but I don't want to keep seeing Genevieve as this stereotypical, oh, she's manipulating Peter to get her out of Laura Jean, because, like, just judging from how Peter treats Laura Jean, it's very obvious that he has chosen her and only her, and I don't know, man. I wish I could just... is the best way I can put it. But that is it for my book of the week. I know I didn't have one in September, but what are you gonna do? I actually enjoyed this kind of format where I could just kind of rant about books, not gonna lie. In like terms of like non-spoiler and how I'm feeling as I'm reading the book, and I'm just enjoying it. So I might try to do this like more vlog style, but like I will see, because I am not comfortable vlogging. I will try my hardest to have more of these guys out there, probably once a month as per usual with some of these videos that I have going on, because it's just a little easier for me. But if you have any books that, like, say if you saw my Goodreads, because I do have a TBR I own pile and Goodreads is like a shelf, if you see any of those books that pique your interest and want me to explain like how I'm feeling as I'm reading, or any books that are on my TBRs that you really want to see me kind of explain that isn't nearly as formal as a tea talk and has like my actual like spoilers in it, then go ahead and leave those down below, or like in my TBRs or wrap-ups or something that you'd like to see, or even like if you see it on Goodreads, be sure to like mention it on a Goodreads thing, or find me on Instagram when I post stories about like books that I just acquired or books that I'm currently reading, just all those things. I would love to hear from you guys. On that, all of my social media links are down below. They are at Bookish Therese, if you didn't know. And then on top of that, I upload twice a week, every Wednesday and Saturday, unless something happens, in which case you probably should be following one of my social media handles so you know what's going on. But until then, I will see you guys on Wednesday with a new video. Bye.